This vessel sails under regulations set forth by the United States Coast Guard. Emergency exits are located on the side on each deck, and life jackets are located under seats in marked bins throughout the cabin. For your safety, please do not stand on the benches, and please refrain from smoking anywhere on the vessel.
Welcome aboard. Today we are headed out on a cruise around the San Francisco Bay. We'll voyage out under the Golden Gate Bridge, around famous Alcatraz Island, and get a unique seaside view of the beautiful city on the bay. From San Francisco to Alcatraz to the Golden Gate Bridge and beyond, we'll be covering a lot of territory today, a lot of history, and a lot of stories. San Francisco is a port city, a city with salt water in her veins. Take a good look, my friends. But hold on tight. The water can get choppy, even on the calmest days. So be careful if you are walking around the deck. As we pull out of the dock, San Francisco is famous for great food, and Ghirardelli chocolate is part of that legend. Look for the large, dusty orange dome buildings set in from the shore. later, March 28, 1776, Captain Juan Bautista de Anza stood on the bluff where the Presidio is now. Imagine him looking down at the narrow entrance to the bay far below. On that spot, he planted a cross in the ground and established a fort. The word Presidio translates as Army Post in Spanish, and the cross marked the northernmost point of Spain's vast empire. Father Pedro Font visited the bay. He was quite a visionary, because the beauty that Father Font saw was more rugged than the beauty we see today. Look again at the forest of the Presidio. 200 years ago, those bridges were bare rock and sandstone. The first trees were planted there in the 1880s, a century after the Anza planted its cross. Today, the Presidio is now under the protection of the National Park Service.
Go on the American River.
San Francisco today is a quiet town. It's like the town hall of this year. Everybody in San Francisco has a daily shop headed for the hills. The editor of the local newspaper wrote in an editorial, "Doors closed, places of business vacant." The little curse had arrested our onward force of enterprise. On the stretch of waterfront was the Pacific Coast. These few blocks long on action and short on law compliance. The memoirs written years later, some people recall it as a flight of Canada, while others remember it as a moving corner of the hell.
I have seen purer liquor, better cigars, finer tobacco, truer guns and pistols, larger dirks and bowling knives, and pretty court sales here in San Francisco than in any place I have ever visited.
Minutes from every nationality held high carnival there. It was a grand theater, crime, dissension, this.
Rain was all beside the bridge. Gay with the crusty students behind them. That's old point. The crossing of the line.
Clean, lovely, big black squares of wall. Behind each one, cast a hand big to fire 128 cans. Even worse than the
Civil War cannon. protest, there were many people who wanted the bridge. First among the supporters was the engineer, Joseph Behrman Strauss. He not only designed the bridge, he was obsessed with it. He wasn't a man to give in to an engineering challenge or political opposition. Encouraged by Strauss, the voters in the region approved the bridge. Construction began in 1933.
The design that was finally developed actually turned out to be one of the most graceful and delicate objects of Art Deco art that was ever created at the scale of this immense tower, over 700 feet in height, the main span 4,200 feet long. No one had ever built a bridge like this before. Some people say you can never build it again.
Look at the tower at the San Francisco end of the bridge. Then look down at the concrete foundation the tower is standing on. This was the first great challenge, building a concrete pier in water more than 100 feet deep. Enormous temporary walls were built, enclosing an area in the bay the size of a football field. The water. Next came the two towers. When they were completed, thousands of steel strands were bundled together to form the enormous main cables that connect them. Finally, the road itself was built, starting at both ends and working toward the middle to keep the bridge in balance. It's easy to describe. It was far from easy to accomplish. Imagine working day after day, in the cold, in the fog, in the rain, on major construction projects in those days. Experience had shown that one workman usually died for every $1 million spent. The budget of Joseph Strauss was determined 35 lives would not be lost on this bridge. A safety net was fabricated and suspended below the bridge, and although 11 men did die, those 19 lucky men formed a very special club. It's called the Halfway to Hell Club. Of the 11 men who lost their lives during construction and tore through the net. The Golden Gate Bridge was completed in less than 5 years in May 1937. Joseph Strauss let the world know exactly how he felt.
The Golden Gate Bridge, the bridge which could not and should not be built, which the War Department would not permit, which the rocky foundation of the pier base would not support, which would have no traffic to justify it, which would ruin the beauty of the Golden Gate.
Let your eyes follow the bridge from shore to shore. The roadway extends for 1.25 miles without touching down on solid ground. Look at the two main cables. There's enough wire there to wrap around the planet 3 times. Each strand in the cable is secured with steel reinforcement in a 50,000-ton foundation buried deep underground. Impressive numbers, but numbers alone can't tell the story of the migration south. Now, let's all take a moment to enjoy this magnificent panorama. The sun is with these sails down the way. In addition to its other qualities, Spain is a challenging place for sailors and surfers alike.
So that area between Crissy Field and Golden Gate Bridge at Fort Point is becoming one of the top wind surfing locations in the world. Because the wind is
Decided to proceed through the Golden Gate in heavy fog. In the early morning hours, the Rio de Janeiro struck the rocks. The ship did not have watertight bulkheads, and it sank in a mere 10 minutes. Many of the 210 passengers and crew were below deck and couldn't see it. 128 lives were lost. By the time the fire burned itself out, much of San Francisco's once proud downtown was little more than rubble. 28,000 buildings destroyed. Named for pelicans, those Alcatrazes. We're passing another place with a name that came from the Spanish. Over to the left is the island the Spanish called La Isla de Nuestra Señora de los Ángeles, the island of Our Lady of the Angels. Nowadays, we just call it Angel Island. 2,000 years ago, Angel Island was home to the Miwok Indians. The Miwok lived a good life in a small island paradise, hunting in the island forest and fishing in the bay. Later, the Spanish used it as a military base, and later still, the U.S. The price of a wrong answer was deportation. But today, the old detention center houses a museum, a monument to San Francisco's Asian immigrants, men and women who fought their way past legal barriers and racial prejudice to enjoy America's promise of a brighter future. The one and only Alcatraz Island is directly ahead. Once, the only creatures that lived on that barren rock were flocks of pelicans. In fact, that's where Alcatraz got its name. The Spanish named the island after the pelicans, those Alcatrazes. The U.S. Army... These were hard men, kidnappers, bank robbers, killers, men so dangerous that when the first batch arrived by train in 1934, not one was allowed to step down onto free soil. They simply loaded the train cars, one by one, onto barges, and floated them out to the island with the inmates chained up inside. Rumor that if a man died on Alcatraz, his corpse would leave the same way, stone cold death. But it changed. With men like these, you could never be too careful. The building you see on top of the hill is the inmate's new home, the Alcatraz cell. Go ahead and reach your arms out as far as you can side to side. That's how wide an Alcatraz cell is, 5 feet across. Now reach your hands up high above your head. That's how tall. Notice the circular water tower. Alcatraz is surrounded by water, but on the island itself, not a drop. Fresh water had to come from San Francisco, and not by any pipeline. 2 or 3 times a week, a barge arrived, full of 180,000 gallons of fresh water. It was pumped up into that tank. The tall smokestack marks the Alcatraz powerhouse. One thing that couldn't be brought out here by boat was electricity, so they made their own.
They had no tailor-made cigarettes, they had no candy bars, chewing gum, soft drinks, radio, television, newspapers, or rolls or rehabilitation programs. They had none of that by being sent to Alcatraz.
Men sent to Alcatraz considered themselves the elite among convicts.
But on the rock, I'm not trying to put a feather in my hat or nothing, but they had a lot of class. You could say they were a higher caliber of criminals. They were more
like a king in any other prison. But here, on the rock, he mopped floors just like anybody else. With no one to protect him, with him to Alcatraz, a case of untreated syphilis was eating his brain and slowly driving him insane. He ended up locked in the bug cage, the fenced-off section of the hospital for mental patients. Still the tough guy, Capone fought with his ward mate, not with guns or knives, but with bedpans, full bedpans. Afterwards, the once mighty crime czar had to be washed off with a hose.
swaying like Sammy Kaye's music. The water in the commode was spinning around. The tower was shaking. And I said, my God, if this goes over, I'm going to end up in a bay locked up in this cage.
On the walls of the guards' barracks, you can still see writing from the Indian occupation of 1969 to 1971. look for the words Indian Land and Indians Welcome. A group of 89 Native Americans claimed the island and held out here for 2 years. Historian John Martini is here to explain what happened.
They claimed Alcatraz under an old treaty that said that male members of the Great Sioux Nation could homestead unused excess federal property. The first time in nearly a century when Indians of all tribes would gather together for a common purpose.
Destroyed building with open, empty windows. This was once a luxurious Spanish mission-style mansion, home to the Alcatraz warden. It burned in a fire that broke out during the Indian occupation. All that is left is this battered shell. Looking at these cliffs passing by, you can get a close-up view of why Alcatraz is called the Rock. When the army first arrived, the island was so barren that there weren't even any plants. There wasn't any dirt for them to grow in. Soil had to be imported here from Angel Island before anything bloomed on the Rock.
The tower, the officer spotted him, and he shot and killed one and wounded another, and the other was captured.
The whole top floor of the Industries building was a laundry. Alcatraz inmates washed uniforms for all the armed forces around the Bay Area. The laundry arrived on an army boat and was delivered by soldiers. That gave one very smart inmate an idea. Slowly and patiently, he began to collect bits and pieces of uniforms as they made their way through the laundry. And when I say patient, I mean it. It took him 10 years to do it, but he finally collected a complete army uniform, dog tags and all, armed with nothing. bedrock 200 feet below the surface. Above and below water, that pier is more massive than the Great Pyramid of Cheops in Egypt, and it contains more concrete than the Empire State Building. The tunnel through Yerba Buena Island is the largest diameter transportation ore tunnel in the world. The Bay Bridge received international attention when a section of the road